Morning, yow reet, how do, and other things that Yorkshire folk from here in the north of England say to each other when they happen to pass on a campsite such as this one, on a glorious day such as this one. And actually you'll be able to hear yourself having these kind of joyful conversations with fellow campers, because this particular camper van is not making an awful racket, chugging out fumes and polluting the space that you're trying to enjoy, because this is an electric VW camper, and at edubconversions.co.uk this is our specialty. In this video I'm going to be talking you through all of the decisions behind how we converted this camper van and other camper vans just like it. We are now at a position at edubconversions.co.uk where we can repeat build. So rather than doing one-off builds that cost more money to design and take longer to actually put together, these are now off-the-shelf bolt-in conversions that are available to any classic camper. So sit back, relax, and grab yourself a brew. When you are converting a classic car such as this one to electric, there's actually a lot that goes on in the background about the design and about the fabrication specifically that needs to make sure that basically all of the new bits fit into the old bit. And those are for two main reasons. You've got security, so in terms of the actual physical items, the batteries, the motor, etc., need to hold solid to the original vehicle. You don't want things falling off as you're driving around. You also don't want that fabrication to be catching on anything within the vehicle that needs to exist, like brakes, etc. But it's also very important to make sure this is obviously an electric conversion, so there is high voltage in these vehicles. These in particular are running at 400 volts, so that's an incredibly dangerous voltage, and you can't have that packaged in a way that's going to compromise the vehicle and compromise the performance, but also put any risk to you, the driver or the passenger of the conversion. All of that has to be taken into account. And whenever you do a brand new conversion as a company, you can buy a pack from another company where you can install their ready-made conversion kits, and that's one option that you can go down. Or you can start and build something from scratch that actually fits the bill and matches up with the components that you want to be using within the conversion. At eDub Conversions, we started in 2013, so this is our 10-year anniversary if you're watching this video on the year of its release in 2023. And we've been pioneering the campervan conversions for that entire time. So every single vehicle that we do is always coming back round to, well, how do we put that technology into the classic camper? Now, we classify classic campers as everything up to about 1979, so the T2 and previous. The T2s themselves, the bay windows like you see here, builds up of three broad different types. You've got an early bay, a late bay the other side, and a crossover bay in between, and they share certain components mainly around the fabrication beneath the vehicle that need to be mapped on when we are doing our fabrication work. And so we ensure that our packs that we produce for campers are interchangeable between all of those different types of VW camper. You then have earlier than the T2s, so the T2s came out in 1967. Previous to that was the infamous split screen camper, and again the packs are compatible with the split screen campers, and we just make sure that the main battery box bulk and the complicated bit that we build in-house at eDub Conversions up in the north of England, we make sure that bit is fully compatible with every single one of these vehicles, and it's the fabrication beneath that that actually bolts it onto the vehicle that's interchangeable depending on what version you have. That means that our conversions are quicker, it means our conversions are cheaper, and it means you've got much more reliability in the conversions. We don't have to do almost like a beta testing where we send a vehicle out and then we might see it back in a week or two, or we might see it back in a month or two, or might see it back in a year or two because certain things aren't quite perfect. But we're at the point where in 2023 we can offer these pretty reliably off the shelf as almost a bolt-on kit, and that's really, really incredible. And it's quite fun as a business to be able to get to that stage as a conversion company. So why campervans is not actually a question I ask myself very often, but we are asked that whenever we go to shows, whenever we're out on the road, by people saying, look, you have hundreds, thousands of classic cars to choose from. Why the classic campers? And for us, it's a really obvious point that comes right back to the origin of eDubs. We have mostly all come from a non-mechanic background, which is quite unusual for a company within this industry. So we haven't come into this by thinking about, okay, we know how to deal with engines and we know how to deal with classic cars, and therefore how do we evolve that into electrification, which is what you'll see from a lot of conversion specialists. We've come at it from a different perspective, where we've gone, here is a really great vehicle that's really iconic, really practical, and everybody loves it, but it's a dreadful engine. It's rubbish. And actually, there's only so much you can do as a kind of ceiling there of what you can do to the engine to make it tolerable, but it's always going to be the weak link in the chain of this entire vehicle. So we've said, okay, let's get rid of the bit that we don't like, let's get rid of the engine, and let's replace it with a quiet, low maintenance, quick, cheap, affordable way of powering the vehicle with an electric drivetrain system instead. The second reason is that electrification just makes so much sense for a camper van, not just because it's a vehicle that has to drive, but also because it's a camper van. It's something that's effectively a home on wheels. You're driving this around and then you're parking up and you're enjoying it at a campsite, in a lay-by, on your driveway, wherever there's a place to stop, you can turn your seat around and sit in the back and enjoy the camper van side of things. And that opens up a whole new place of where electrification can come in handy. So being on the campsite and plugging yourself in, it means that we can do things like induction hobs inside, because the electrification system already exists. So it's not a huge change. If you were to take a petrol powered camper van and do an induction hob system, you have to install a humongous battery system, a charging system, an inverter system. All of that needs to be additional to the vehicle. Whereas we've got so much of that already built into the vehicle. So adding on an induction hob, as an example, is not a massive change. It also matches with, I think, the ethos of these camper vans. I truly believe that if the electric technology existed back in the 60s and the 70s, that VW would have made these electric. It just makes sense. This is a type of vehicle where it's a little bit hippie, it's a little bit green, it's a little bit eco. So to match it up with electricity in terms of from a renewable aspect is just match made in heaven. It makes so much sense. And then you have the recharging aspects. You have places like this gorgeous campsite that we're here at in North Yorkshire. You're going to be plugging into the campsite just as you would with any other camper van, but as well as using that campsite power to power the normal things in your camper van, like your fridge, like your induction hob, like your lights, like your sound system, you're also recharging the battery. And places like this are perfect for solar generation, for wind power. So that actually the electricity that you're getting is not just cheaper than petrol, which is reasonably straightforward, but actually it could be even greener. You could even get to a position where with such an open space like this, the energy that you are using into your camper van is zero cost and is 100% directly from renewable sources. All of those things come together into what we believe is a really perfect package. And so that's why we've pioneered and stuck the line of making these classic camper vans not just electric, but as brilliant as a complete package as absolutely possible. So when we carry out a conversion here at edubconversions.co.uk, we go by the principle of second glance. We want to create something where at first glance, it's a beautiful classic camper van. And you look at it and go, that's great, it puts a smile on your face. And then you look again and you go, but something's different about that camper. Something, it's not making a noise, there's no cloud of smoke coming out the back of it, it's pretty quick. And we always try and stick to that we don't want people to be attracted to the vehicle because it makes a stupid noise or because it's got some strange LED stuff going on or strange bling that makes it look unauthentic. The biggest area that makes a difference is actually behind this hatch. If you're into it, this is where people want to be looking. This looks very different. Everything else in the vehicle looks reasonably similar. This is where the brains go on. This is your drive system. So what you can see in front of you is the battery pack, and nestled beneath that is a small drive unit from a Tesla Model S in these models. Now, we use the Tesla Model S motor for a number of different reasons. First of all, it's the perfect size. It's very small and ideally very low down. So for a rear-wheel drive vehicle like this, it works absolutely perfect. It's also pretty powerful. We don't need any of that power, but it means that it's much easier, obviously, to take a vehicle motor that's too powerful and turn it down than to take something that's not powerful enough and try and turn it up. These vehicles originally had if you were lucky, 35 to 40 brake horsepower. These are rated to the equivalent of about 100, 110. So you've got so much more power. But what's really crucial about all of that is you've got that power where you absolutely need it, which is at low speeds. So that's not just setting off at the lights, getting off at roundabouts, but also getting up hills. One of the biggest fears of the classic campervan owner is an upcoming hill. That is no longer a problem with an electric conversion from eDub. The battery box that you see here is filled in our E-pack, so we have an E30 and an E60, which are our Tesla packs. Those contain brand new batteries, so we're not reclaiming Tesla batteries with these builds. They are straight from the factory, which means that you get the 100% of the life cycle of those batteries. If you use old batteries, if you use Tesla batteries, for example, then you don't really know where they've been or what's happened to them or the longevity of them or even how they've been stored since they came out of the vehicle. So we did use those for a small time, but it's been very difficult to actually secure the stock of those items. And as I said, it doesn't really give the customer any real guarantee of what's been placed into their vehicle. So we go with brand new. The other reason we use brand new batteries is they are a custom format that matches a lot of different types of batteries that are available on the market from loads of different suppliers. It's about a shoebox size in terms of a module. And what that means is that right now this vehicle has the best technology that's available as of this year. But in 5 years' time, as we've seen from the market, there will be better technology. There'll be faster charging, there'll be better batteries. But our systems are intentionally modular. So if in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, you decide actually, we've done all right with this has been really enjoyable, but now there are these new batteries available that have a bigger range or faster charging available, then we can just take out the old ones and put in the new ones instead. So it's a modular upgrade. Whereas if you go for any other camper van, like a more modern OEM electric camper, you're stuck with the technology that's available today. If you want to change your mind in 5, 10 years' time, you have to sell the vehicle. And when you invest in something like this that has a personality, that has an interior that matches your ideals, you don't want to have to get rid of it in 5 years' time. This can belong to you. This camper van can be yours in your exact style and tastings for the next 45 to 50 years. Now, we mentioned before that these vehicles are a lot quieter than their petrol counterparts. And would you believe it, this is on right now. Right now, if you can't hear it, but very quietly is the coolant pump just moving coolant around the drive unit just to make sure that it stays nice and cool. This is on right now, and that's incredible that actually you can sit there. We sometimes forget in the workshop that we've left a vehicle on because it just sits there kind of just generally chugging away and making sure everything stays cool. But this is incredible. So right now we could jump in the driver's seat and I could put down the throttle and off we go. There's no loud noise. There's no crossing our fingers to hope it starts. This is ready to go. And I also mentioned earlier about our fabrication system. So the battery boxes remain reasonably similar for every version that we do, and the fabrication underneath changes depending on the vehicle, so the way it bolts on. And that's a big deal for people like the IVA and mainly the DVLA. So we are known and I think respected by the DVLA in terms of the way that we do our conversions. We've done several of the camper vans so far and we haven't had a single rejection of changing the fuel type from petrol to electric. We've also had a couple of inspections from our other conversions and they've all passed, no problem. And that comes down to how we mount the battery boxes. So they're mounted by connecting onto the original mounting holes of the engine. So on the campers, that's 2 places on the each side on the axle and on the chassis, and then there's one at the far end where the gearbox used to mount as well. And that makes our installation really simple, but it also means, like I say, places like the DVLA are going to pass this through with no issues whatsoever. So I'm going to talk you through the interior of the camper, but before I do, I'm not going to spend too long on this because we have intentionally built a system that is outside the vehicle. So all of our electrification kit has nothing to do with your interior. So if you already have the perfect interior, perfect, we don't need to touch it. If you want a particular interior, perfect, we don't need to touch it. So I'm going to show you what this one looks like as a specific example for this particular camper. But if you wanted anything else in your camper, if you have something else in your camper, it's fine. Because unlike some other conversion companies, we don't have to fill the interior with battery boxes to actually make use of the space. So let's have a look. Traditional sliding door, now copied by the eDub. Interior on this version, we have what's become quite known within the campers, which is a full length rock and roll bed, full width as well on this version. So you've got the full width over to the sides. It simply lifts up and pops out and you've got seat belts tucked down the back there as well. Underneath there is where we keep our charging cables, it's where we keep our window covers, and it's where we keep our table to be able to plug into the floor. Plug in. I can't not say plug in when I'm talking about things. The cabinet system is bespoke to our unit, but it contains everything that you need. There's the induction hob that I mentioned earlier. We've got a 12-volt fridge that actually has a freezer compartment. Ooh-ay. You've got water in there, which is on an electrified system, so it's not a hand pump or a foot pump system. You just turn the switch, water comes straight through. And then you've got this lovely panel here, which is telling you, first of all, diagnosis about what your 12-volt battery is. So yes, electric cars still need a 12-volt battery to get things started. So that's there on the side with the voltage. And then switches and plugs for powering interior bits and pieces. And also when you're connected to the site, you can use those 3-pin plugs to power anything else that you want to go with. In the front, in fact, I'll open this door for this one. This particular chair is it's a captain's chair, so it's got a lever down the front to let it swivel all the way round. Again, you may see some campers that have the kind of buddy box here. They're okay. For me personally, I would rather have as much of this space as possible. So having a captain's chair means that you can set up the table, someone can sit in the front, some people can sit in the back, you can all sit around the table together. It's making the most use of the space. In the front again, so we've tried to keep this as minimal as possible, and I'm going to talk you through the actual driving stuff in a little second. But as you can see, it's one of those second glance things again, where initially you'd look and go, oh, that looks great. And then you look again and go, but hang on, there's no gear stick. Or hang on, that dash looks a tiny bit different to what I'm used to. Or hang on, it's on right now and it's not making a noise. The things we mentioned earlier. Also, the pop top up on top here, I'm going to be honest with you, it's not the prettiest pop top in the world, but it is so practical, it's worth it. This is a full length pop top, which means when it's raised, you've got a 6-foot long bed upstairs, space for 2 people. When we go away as a family, 2 of us sleep up top and 2 of us sleep down the bottom, and it's perfect for family getaways. When we started eDub, we actually started as eDub Trips, and that was purely to take a classic camper, make it electric, and offer it out for hire. And what that taught us, aside from all of the electrification stuff that we've learned, was actually how do we create something that's really easy to use? We didn't want to have a system where you would hire the camper van, but you had to know the certain method of doing things. You had to press that button while holding this thing, while crossing your fingers, while standing on one leg. We didn't want to have that as a system. So we wanted to make sure that that made everything really idiot-proof, basically, so that anybody who came to use the vehicle would be able to use it. Now, this particular camper van, this Maggie camper, is actually going for hire. It's available for hire this season in Scotland. If you're watching this from the future, first of all, hello. Secondly, I don't know where she is. So maybe have a look at our website, edubtrips.co.uk, find out where she is at the moment. She will move around to give as many people an opportunity as possible to use an electric classic camper. But what it also taught us, just kind of maybe deliberately, but also just because we don't know any other way of doing it, is that we also brought that simplicity to all of our conversions. So every other conversion that we do also takes the same level of simplicity. In terms of running gear, that's things like a pedal. Now, the pedal is actually an electric pedal, so it's not the original one that's on 400 levers. It's on digital pedal that's connected by wires to the rear of the drive unit. And that is, but it looks and feels like the original, so you wouldn't know, and it feels proper under your foot. So you're not going to suddenly feel like, oh, I've got to get used to this weird new pedal. Nope, it's exactly the same as what you expect. No gear stick, but mainly that's just something you've got to eliminate from your brain. You don't have something there that you've got to go for. We've also had everything so like, to actually turn it on, you turn the key, which is what you're used to doing. There's not extra buttons or extra things to do or a magic way of doing it or a fob. You just turn the key. And then to actually start the drive unit, you spring the key, just as you used to start an engine. Everything is incredibly logic. We've also gone with the dashboard, which is intentionally a replica dashboard of what you're used to in a eDub camper. You have 3 dials, a large one in the center that's doing your speedo, that's the same, and we have 2 slightly smaller dials on either side. Now, in a traditional camper, the right-hand dial was normally blank, or you'd pay a reasonably extortionate amount of money to get a clock in that dial. And on the left-hand side was your fuel gauge and your lights and other things like that. So we've taken that same design, and we've built a dashboard that looks the same. Again, second glance principle. You look at it once, you don't think anything of it, but then you look again and go, hang on, I've got state of charge here instead of fuel. I've actually got motor temperature on here instead of nothing at all, or a light that tells you nothing. I've got now my amp gauge on the far right, and that's actually, think of it like a power gauge. So when you're putting your foot down on the throttle, the dial goes up to show you how much power you're using. But also likewise, the dial goes down when you're regenning power back into the battery, but also when you're charging, that dial is live. So you can actually see when you're charging at a regular charger or a campsite or even a rapid charger that you are taking in energy into the pack. So driving an electric eDub camper. Again, we've tried to make this as simple as possible, and to be honest, I think we've nailed it. Most of the ways that you think about driving a classic camper are the same. So first of all, to turn it on, we're just turning the key, giving the dials a second just to turn on the drive unit and do all of the pre-charge checks. So within the battery box, you've got pre-charge that's happening there as well. Then when we're ready to drive, we tell the unit that we're ready, and we do that just by springing the ignition just for a second. Now we select our direction, so in this case we're going to go forwards, otherwise we're in a hedge. So I flicked the gear selector there to forwards. I'm going to release the handbrake, which is original, so that's a twist away from us and release, and we are literally ready to go. All I need to do is squeeze down on the throttle pedal and we're away. It is that simple. All of this is now intelligently being read by the system, and all the cooling system is working properly. The battery management system is keeping an eye on the batteries. The drive unit itself is monitoring its own temperature level. If the temperature goes above 40 degrees, which is on the dial here, then a fan will turn on the cooling system to keep that really chilled. And that's really efficient because it means that you, the driver, don't have to think about any of that system. So much of it is built together to be bulletproof. We also put one of our own designed eDub control boards into this system, and that is effectively like your vehicle fuse board. So it's got fuses in there, it's got relays in there. Joss in our department puts that together and designs it for our builds, and it means that, as I said before, everything is taken care of, everything is controlled by the main safety systems that already exist within the battery management system. The battery management is primarily doing your safety, and that's the thing that's doing the job to make sure that everything's working properly. So effectively, if things are working, which is that simple, then it's going to work fine. If anything doesn't work, we had issues before where, for example, if there is an issue with the cooling system, you don't want the cooling system to keep running if there's a leak, for example. And we had issues there where the system would turn itself off, but the pump would keep on going. So we've built all of those systems together to make sure that it's all really bulletproof, and that you, the owner or the user or the driver, doesn't have to think too much about how it actually works. Now, the power system in this vehicle is a lot more powerful than you need. I'm over a bit of a bumpy terrain here on the campsite, and it's coping with the bumps absolutely fine. If I did come up a bit of a divot, or if I think we went to a festival the other week and there were trucks stuck in the mud all over the place, not an issue for the electric campers. Rear wheel drive, electric power, really efficient to be able to get you moving again. But I've got, as I said before, over 100 brake horsepower under my right foot. I'm not going to do it right now because Joss is hanging out the window to film this and his head will fall off. But if I really wanted to, I could. But again, it makes you feel like you don't want that power in this vehicle. First of all, I've got no headrest. I don't want to have to be able to floor it in terms of having the full power of the Tesla drive unit. I don't want to have to floor it and have to brace my neck as my head goes flying off behind me. You're also still in a camper. You're still high up, which is amazing, by the way. You've got a huge steering wheel. You really feel like you're in charge of the road. You can see everything, not just in front of you because of the huge bay window, but the windows all around you and windows all behind you as well. You have so much visibility. It's absolutely incredible. So you're always reminded that you're still in a classic car. You're not suddenly thinking, oh, I'm going to forget about the fact that I'm in a classic and I'm going to floor it and behave like I'm in a Tesla. That's not going to happen. You get the fully 100% authentic experience of the classic camper whilst having the 100% authentic experience of an electric vehicle. So we broadly have two different types of customer at edubconversions.co.uk. Some of them come to us with their classic campers and say, hey, I want it electrified, nothing else doing to it. And that's absolutely fine. We can deal with that, no problem. And others come to us who want a camper van sourcing. Again, we can take care of that for you. Whatever your goals are for a classic camper van, make sure you get in touch. The website again is edubconversions.co.uk. There's a link in the notes below. and you can also get hold of us through the website there. And what will happen is we'll get in touch with you, we'll talk through your ideals and work out the best way to get one of our packs into a camper for you to enjoy. So thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe it, and it'll be awesome, especially if you're part of some kind of clubs, to share this video into those clubs. Tell people to say, hey, I think you'd really appreciate this video. Take a look at what eDub Conversions are doing with electrification and with classic campers. Thanks again for watching. I'm going to go plug into the campsite and get myself a bacon sarnie on.